This time we'll call to order the Federal Way School Board Board of Education meeting for February 12th, 2013. We are reconvening from executive session. Of course, Director Peterson, Director Griffin, Director Moore, Director Wilson, and Director Barney are all present this evening. I would ask that the audience please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Todd Beamer, High School JROTC. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Did they do a great job? You know, it's fun. Before the meeting this evening, I was talking with them, and they were nervous, but they did a fantastic job. And I enjoy having our JROTC programs come and lead in our pledge. They are just part of the best and brightest in the nation. And with that, the chair will call for an approval of our agenda.
President Moore, I move to accept the agenda with an amendment that we remove K and L from the consent agenda and place it as a new 11B.
No, second.
It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And at this time, all board members should have their consent agenda minus items K and L that have been moved off the agenda and moved to item 11B. Do we have a motion?
Mr. President, I move the Board of Education approve the consent agenda as amended.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries unanimously as well. Thank you, board members. At this time, we will hear from our superintendent, Superintendent New.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. Good evening. What I thought I would do is take you through a presentation I delivered a couple of weeks ago at the Chamber of Commerce luncheon, and I've tweaked it up a little bit for tonight's presentation for you. And so what I want to do is talk a little bit about where I believe that public education in America is today, what impact that has on us, or perhaps what we should be thinking about, can be thinking about, as we continue to grapple with what it is that we want our students to know and the skills that we want them to possess as they graduate from our schools. And ultimately what I want to hopefully do is provoke a continued conversation that you had a couple of board meetings ago about what our graduates will look like. So with that, I thought I'd start off with a little historical perspective, and dating back to Thomas Jefferson, who arguably put together the first free public education system in the world. And Mr. Jefferson's public education system looked in the beginning like this. It was 3 years of free public education in reading, writing, and arithmetic. And you'll see in quotes these first set of slides, these are taken from the literature from Mr. Jefferson, where he basically wanted the best boy of genius that would be moved on to 20 grammar schools while the residue was dismissed. So after 1 to 2 years, 20 exceptional leaders would be raked from the rubbish annually and educated at the public expense. What that would look like would be 4 or 5 more years of more rigorous form of education. His goal was to produce basically 10 young boys that would be raked from the rubbish or chosen for the superiority of their parts and dispositions to go on to William and Mary and study science. And hence, our public education system was born, and obviously, so was the model of select and sort. So, around the turn of the 20th century, academics, business leaders, politicians, clergy used the public education system to basically prepare students, the workforce, for the industrial age. And it was beautifully formed for the select and sort model, because those who were chosen to be leaders were provided that type of education, where the others were selected to be the doers for that industrial age. But also around the turn of the century, they were using the public education system, began using the public education system to assimilate the immigrants that were coming over. And so you began to see in the turn of the century the addition of programs such as these, which make sense at that time. Over the years, you'll see a tremendous amount of activities, programs, curriculum added. And these programs, and not that we do all of these here in Federal Way or even throughout the country, but these programs have stayed with us for the most part. And as we know, some of these are extremely important, many of these are extremely important. But with that also came no additional hours in the school day, or the school calendar for that matter, and a whole lot of mandates on the public schools. This list that I'm showing you is from the book that you all have, from Jamie Vollmer's Schools Cannot Do It Alone. And so as you see, as the decades went on, or have gone on, tremendous amount of activities have been added to the school's plate. And around the 1990s, 2000, we began to see kind of the political models taking shape as Republicans and Democrats each put in place their reform initiatives. So needless to say, and I realize I'm flipping through this quickly, but of course it'll be posted on the website. It actually is already up from the Chamber luncheon. What Mr. Vollmer went on to say, and this is a quote from his book, "No generation of teachers and administrators in the history of the world has been told to fulfill this mandate. Not just teach children, but raise them." And at the same time, kind of the tension of opposites, if you will, a book that has come out recently called Surpassing Shanghai. And what this is about is Shanghai's startling results across the spectrum as measured by the international assessments. And our Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan, called it a wake-up call, and the President called it a Sputnik moment. But what I don't understand is that we've had a history in this country of being bad test takers. And I realize this slide's kind of messy, but basically starting in the 60s, we were 12th out of 12 countries, at that time industrialized, developed countries, in the first international math study. And as you look at this list, you'll see that we've pretty much hung around the bottom until recently when we started to make some gains. So is this good news? According to the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, what you have here, and I apologize if this is hard to read, but the red bars represent the country's performance in the 2009 PISA, and the blue bars represent their perceived entrepreneurial capability by the Entrepreneurship Monitor, which is arguably the most respected think tank on global entrepreneurship. And so what you see, what they have determined is that there's a direct inverse relationship between a country's performance on the PISA and their creativity, their innovation, their ability to be entrepreneurial. What's really interesting is that you have the Asian countries now beginning to realize, or have realized, that creativity and innovation is critical to their economic success. In Taiwan, they recently published these calls for reform. Basically, number one, reform the entire system. 2, lower academic pressure. 3, break the shackles of testing. And 4, give back students the joy of learning. And so what they have come to realize is what Albert Einstein said many years ago. And so with that, and I 2 of the board members have already seen this, and so I'm not going to make you guys take the quiz, but I'd like to ask groups that I had this opportunity to speak to, pick your top 3 countries in their ability to be creative, innovative, and entrepreneurial. So what you have right now is the Asian and European countries working really hard to become more like the United States and to produce a more creative and innovative student or citizenry. Because the industrial age, as we know it, is over. Having been raised in the Detroit area, an area that was dependent upon the auto industry, and watching the recession hit there in the early 2000s where the rest of the country was doing just fine, this is a pretty startling graph. And what you see is that our output continues to increase due to technology and perhaps offshoring, but the manufacturing jobs that used to produce those products are not in numbers like they used to be. In the President's 2011 State of the Union address, and I'm just going to read from the slide, he said that America still has the largest, most prosperous economy in the world. No workers are more productive than ours. No country has more successful companies or grants more patents to inventors and entrepreneurs. We're the home to the world's best colleges and universities where more students come to study than any place on earth. And he's right. I totally agree with that. However, here's the conundrum. And I'm not going to read to you these next slides. They come from headlines from across the globe. But what we have happening, and we know this, is that our college graduates are having trouble finding work. In fact, on Friday, I was at a board meeting for the Workforce Development Council in Seattle and King County. And the conversation was that we're having trouble finding jobs for kids because those jobs that used to be kid jobs are being filled by adults. Mm-hmm. And I talked about this a couple of board meetings ago. Americans now owe more than $875 billion in student loans, which is more than the total amount that we owe in credit cards. And by the way, our cars, our car debt, automobile debt. So, what does this mean? The state of Washington is one of the most well-poised economic climates in the country. We rank second in what they call the new economy, which is knowledge-based, global, entrepreneurial, and innovation-based. But 40% of the jobs in the state are related to international trade. Boeing distribution chain is worldwide, with more than 85% of their planes going to international or foreign countries. Our agricultural exports, staggering dollar amounts. So as we grapple with what we think it is that our students need to learn, this list came from Dr. Zhao, and he talks about the importance of students being confident, having friends, we use the term friends now with Facebook and social media forums, but that's a very real context with which our society is now operating in, but also the ability to be risk takers, alert to opportunities, global competent. These are skills that I think that we've always kind of referred to as soft skills, hard to measure. But yet these are the skills that we're being told now and evidence of being necessary for our students, for us to survive in today's economy. I'll say this here, and I haven't said this yet, but I do predict that higher education, not community colleges, because I think community colleges serve a very specific niche. In fact, the average age of the community college student is 26 years old. A lot of them go back to school to be retrained for the workforce. But I think the four-year institutions with their tuition, which has become out of reach for most families, and the degrees that they're producing with students not finding jobs, I think a tsunami is going to hit the higher education market. So I think that what we've got to do is, right now, we continue to prepare our kids to have that option to go to college if they choose. And when we say college, we mean university, college, trade school, post-secondary learning, post-secondary education. And our focus needs to continue to be equity and excellence for all students. These are not mutually exclusive terms. And the work that we're doing through our end statements, global citizens, or graduating with the skills to be global citizens, that all students will produce and succeed academically, that we will address the issues of disproportionality in our discipline, but equally important, engagement factors, producing responsible citizens, and of course, the continued work in engaging parents into the process. But going back to E1, ENDS 1, I think that we really need to take our kids and the opportunities that we're affording them to the next level and create global campuses in our school system here in Federal Way. And that our job is to access resources, develop partnerships internationally that will produce opportunities for our kids here, but also the opportunity for them to study abroad, to learn abroad, to study or intern with foreign countries. And I also think that we need to take advantage of the opportunity to bring international students here and to learn from them. We are an international community. I see 64 flags in the cafeteria of Federal Way High School. But to formalize those partnerships and relationships and to share resources, access resources, I think we have unbelievable opportunities to create opportunities for our students that A, we didn't have necessarily when we were growing up, but B, we didn't need them because we grew up in a regional economy. And lastly, I believe strongly that we need to continue to meet the needs of the whole child, and that we can make Federal Way an arts community, a destination for the arts. We have outstanding athletic teams. We have an outstanding physical education program. We've done great work with our career and technical education, and as you know, we have the Career Running Start, or the Career Start program with Highline, the only one in the state of Washington. But we need to expand elective program opportunities for our students so that they can explore their interest. And as you know, and you commissioned us to come back to you with a report on a revised graduation requirements, which we plan to do so in the late spring of the year. So with that, I believe that we are poised and are leading the nation in creating our leaders of tomorrow. I applaud the work that this district has done. I applaud the work of our principals, who are instructional leaders in our buildings. I applaud the work of our teachers, who have worked so hard the last couple of years to embrace these reform initiatives that we've placed before them. And I appreciate the effort and the results that we're getting from them. And most importantly, I applaud our students and our parents for the work that they're doing. And as you know, and we're going to get some students back in front of you with a We Day update in the near future, our kids are outstanding. So with that, any questions from the board?
Board members, questions, comments? Well, I thank you for putting this presentation together, and of course, I've seen it and knew the answers to the questions, so I didn't want to yell those out for those who hadn't seen it. And I agree with you. I think, when I first got on the board, the slogan was "Every Child a Reader." And we kind of moved from that to every child college ready. And now I think the next piece is this global community, globally responsible graduate who has opportunities that aren't just federal way and aren't just Washington. They're really worldwide opportunities to collaborate with people in other places around the world, because the world is most assuredly getting smaller. And so I think as far as the shift in our thinking and the shift in our North Star, I think it's worthwhile. And it's one we can lock onto for some time until we move into space. So thank you for your
Mr. President, if I didn't get to my button quick enough to hit it down to say something.
It's like a game show.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Buzz me in. I know this actually from the Chamber Luncheon, one of the quotes that I think appeared in the Mirror and those kind of things was that quote, of no generation of teachers and administrators in the history of the world has been told to fulfill this mandate, not just teach children, but also raise them. And I know some of the community were kind of really honed in on that, raise them. And I know for us as a district, that's not something I feel like a school district tries to grab for, and nor do I think you're implying that. But I think by default, when parents abdicate that role or don't pick that up, we're left as a school district to pick that up. And what I love about tonight and just what you're sharing is, I think we know the parents in our district want the best for their children. And I think that's the hope, is that they're just hoping if I get my kid through the Federal Way school district system, that, and just get them to college and hopefully they'll be successful. And there's like this focus that if I just get them to college, and the job of Federal Way schools is just get them to college. If I get them to college, then everything's going to be okay. And what a disservice for this day and age to let parents continue to think that and to spend the thousands and thousands of dollars for that, when in fact it's not going to pay off like they're hoping for, because we want what's best for our kids. And I'm glad we're wrestling with this issue now. And like you said, there's a lot of school districts that aren't. They're just trying to just keep it the same way and in that old paradigm. And we're trying to live in that new place of what is the best way. I think for me, just as you're talking tonight, just talking about that whole global learning, for me, I think the challenge for our district is going to be trying to find meaningful engagement, where there's a lot of things in theory that I think would sound cool, like we could do a Skype phone call with some other classroom and that kind of stuff, but really to find stuff from teachers across the board to be able to find ways where we can get all of our teachers engaged in this process and finding meaningful ways to really, like you said with the Albert Einstein quote, strike up some curiosity, get kids thinking outside the box instead of just trying to get a grade, but actually sit there going, how can I make the world a better place? How do I fit into this global perspective? Creating innovative, creative thinkers. So all that to say, I just want to thank you for your words tonight, and I'm glad we're in this place right now as a district wrestling with this, and I think that's what we want to find is meaningful ways of moving us forward to where, with our ends of trying to create global citizens, we're doing just that. And other districts are scrambling, going, how do I get to that kind of spot where they're at right now? So thank you.
Thank you, Director Peterson. As a parent of young children myself, I don't want any school raising my kids for me. And I certainly don't want to imply that we have to raise children. However, when you look at the mandates, when you scroll through that list of mandates, really the point is that that's what we're being asked to do. And the harsh reality is there are students that come to us that their only meals of the day are served at the schools. The real challenge for us moving forward is to break away from what I think is a narrow version of a school's indicators of success. We are too focused, in my opinion, as a society, on the test score. Certainly that's one indicator, and perhaps a valuable indicator of how we're doing and how our students are doing. But we have an overemphasis, and I believe an excessive assessment attitude in this country. And that list serves as a reminder that we are so much more than just a test score. And right now, in math and reading, according to the federal government. But that our job, our challenge, our oath, if you will, is to help every child find their passion and propel them into a meaningful life. And that is beyond core academics. But it is also about being physically fit. It is also about being globally and culturally competent. It's about having the ability to have conversation in an elevator as well as to stand before an audience and present. And really, our kids need the skills today that only a diplomat needed maybe a decade ago. And our job is to equip them with those skills because they're going to be working and living in foreign countries or for foreign companies. And certainly, we all have neighbors and perhaps family members that are doing that right now.
Director Wilson?
I was just going to say that having spent some time talking to some CTE students, their passion is their future, and making them have to decide and choose between an academic class and a vocational or a CTE class where they could integrate and infuse an academic within their passion area is something that I think is really important that I hear you talk about. I also think we're talking about opportunities and access, and that, for example, Chinese clubs shouldn't have to think about having a bake sale to maybe go down to San Francisco and to the International District to see what it looks like there. They should be able to be global citizens and go to China. Mm-hmm. And do you know how many cookies they would have to sell to get there? And so I just think it's critically important. And then I think the only other thing that I would say is, what child doesn't deserve it?
Thank you.
Director Griffin?
And I appreciate you sharing and the conversations we keep having about the broad scope of how we touch children in our education system. Every morning I have the opportunity to watch a group of students get on a bus from an apartment complex, and it's a long wait for that bus because there are about 25 students that board that bus. But this morning, what was the most appealing to me was there were about 10, 15 adults staying out there with those students getting on the bus, and I watched them wave to the kids as they were leaving, and I thought about the impact that was going to have on those students for that day for learning. We talk about parent involvement. That was parent involvement 101. But each one of those parents, and you kind of touched on that, each one of those parents or guardians, aunts, uncles, whoever they may have been, have an individual focus for each one of those students that got on that bus. One may have wanted them, maybe looking for us to help get them into college. One may be looking for them to have a meal. And we just don't know. But we, as an education system, have to be broad in our reach and our touch to ensure students are successful. And I think we do that really well.
And I totally agree. In fact, I'm just so tired of the media portraying us as being inadequate, underperforming, failing. And when you go back through that list, it's a humble reminder of the work and the challenge that our teachers and our administrators face every day. But I would argue that we're better than we've ever been in all the services that we provide our students. I think we're unbelievable. I think we're the best in the world. That's in my biased opinion. But I will say this, though. I think that the system that we're currently operating in isn't designed for the society that we're living in. And that's nobody's fault. But we're training kids, our students, for jobs that don't exist today, to use technologies that haven't been invented yet. They'll invent them. And so what are the skills that we have to equip them with to be able to take us to this next place, to transform our systems to align with the demands and needs of our society that we're living in? And none of us were trained for this. None of us. And we're all making it up as we go. And we're all doing the best that we can. And so I applaud this board for having these courageous conversations, because I think that these are the real conversations.
Yes.
And I just want to clarify, I'm not against going to college. My dad has his doctorate. There's like 5 doctors on his side of the family. My mom's educated. All my brothers and sisters have college degrees for the public. But we are living in that paradigm shift. And I think I love that what Angela talked about, that parent engagement piece of this isn't just about educating students, but really bringing parents along for the ride and realizing, getting that transition shift of what's really out there, how to really get my kid in the best spot. And I'm excited for where we're moving. So,
Director Peterson, if I may, I really appreciate you bringing that up. I'm certainly not against kids going to college.
No.
What I really believe in is that it's our job to equip all kids with that choice.
absolutely.
Well, clearly, it's become a smaller part of the overall picture, and we want our students to be ready for the world, not just have the degree hanging on the wall that you know.
And the opportunities that we have created with the Korean language. And I know that there's a lot of other opportunities out there. We look at kids taking online classes. That is a booming business right now, not just for high school kids taking high school classes, but they're taking college credits here and abroad and bringing that information back here and being used in our community today. I see it all the time. So we got a lot of opportunities out there, and I know that we're going to continue to move forward with providing those to the students and families here.
Superintendent New, thank you. I think this is the first of several conversations of this nature, and I think this conversation will shape a lot of the work that we're going to do moving forward. So, of course, thank you for your presentation this evening.
Thank you.
As we move forward, at this time we're going to have public comments. We will start first this evening with Mark Knapp.
Thank you, Mr. President, all board members, Superintendent New, and Mrs. Knapp, and members of the public. Many of you may not realize that federal and state law enable the district to authorize folks that are not law enforcement to actually be armed and to protect our kids and school personnel. Thus, I want to share some concepts that can supplement the district's existing school safety measures. Number one, enable highly trained individuals to protect the schools. That would be a greater deterrent, and a great part of the deterrent would be because these individuals would be carrying concealed while wearing normal school attire. Number two, these individuals, we could call them supplemental staff, will obtain training at their own expense. That's an important concept, at their own expense, and qualify just like law enforcement officers, and they would serve without pay. The supplemental staff would be available, according to these concepts that I'm suggesting, to back up school resource officers and other security that already are working at our high schools and our middle schools. Number four, some of us in Federal Way have formed a Citizens School Safety Committee, and we're going to meet and look at various options for school safety. I'm personally convinced that this supplemental staff, if I could use that term, is the most effective way to protect the schools without immense costs to the taxpayers, and the committee would advocate any and all solutions that are feasible and cost effective. So I'm telling you what my personal conviction is, but I'm going to listen to the others on this committee. We've already got many people in our schools, for example, the dads of good students, sometimes known as the dad dogs, that are in the schools every day, all over the United States, but right here in Federal Way, as I understand. And they're volunteers. I want to emphasize that the goal is not to arm teachers. The question about whether or not we should arm teachers, that's the wrong question. Teachers, administrators, school bus drivers, maintenance personnel should be allowed to obtain the kind of training that I'm proposing and participate in this program just like any other potential support staff at their own expense. So the committee is going to, this citizens committee will make written recommendations. I'll present them to the district on the record, but please consider authorizing Superintendent New to meet with some of us and to involve Chief Wilson in the process so we can have a discussion as to all the issues. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Next up this evening, Kurt Papard.
Well, it appears the gun conversation has moved from arming teachers, except for if they wanted to go through their own rigorous training, which of course could never amount to what the police department training received, to volunteers. Watchdogs is the name of the program. Okay, Watchdogs. They have some great students. I know because I run the Watchdogs program at my daughter's school. One of our watchdogs at the school is a King County Correctionals officer down here at the Kent Jail. And he's also highly trained in tactical weapons. We had a talk. He says, there's no way I'm bringing a weapon onto this school. There's no way. There's just too much of a chance for a problem. If a problem comes up, then we have to deal with that a different way, but we leave weapons out of school. You know, that was his response to that question, because I sure don't want to see volunteers being armed with whatever training they get. I mean, I wouldn't want that job, you know, to take weapons into school. I couldn't imagine pointing a gun at a person and having to pull the trigger, even if my life was threatened. That's, just not any place we want to be going. I don't see how we can build a peaceful society when we're continuing to arm ourselves and arming our students, our staff, the volunteers. That's not how we build a peaceful society. In fact, that just builds the opposite. You know, Superintendent New just had a great conversation about some of the challenges facing our schools and how, you know, the schools are being asked to do more to actually raise the children. I spend, as you know, a lot of time in the school helping the students that need that extra support, because as we know, with all the budget cuts, teachers can't do it all. Administrators can't do it all. So I do what I can. I think if we're going to be arming volunteers in the school, what we need to arm them with is the knowledge and the appreciation of how they can really help the children of the community to succeed academically, so that they're able to find that passion, as Superintendent Newey was saying, and really, you know, find the greatness in their own lives. I find with the students that I tutor, all I have to do is let them know they already know it. They just have to believe in themselves. And once they get this concept, man, they take off. And that's how you also reduce the number of students who are going to come through the systems, you know, going off doing this crazy stuff that happened back east. That's how we should be arming our volunteers, is the knowledge and the compassion and the empathy to really help our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up this evening, Lauren Brown.
As Mr. Moore said, my name is Lauren Brown, and I am so thrilled to be speaking with you on behalf of Thomas Jefferson's Speech and Debate team. Speech and debate has been one of, if not the, most valuable experience of my high school career. I have loved every moment, and I have loved the confidence that it has built in me. I'm learning how to present myself to you, how to present myself to my peers, how to prepare for a job interview. And in 2 days' time, I'll be in LA. auditioning for film and drama programs because of the confidence that I built in this program. And that empowerment spans beyond our school and onto the national scale. This last weekend, at the Stanford Invitational Speech and Debate Tournament, 9 competitors from Thomas Jefferson paid their own way to attend. 6 of the competitors made it to the quarterfinals, or better, 4 made it to finals. Moreover, our open duo interpretation team of Benjamin Richman and Kirill Volkov placed 2nd overall against high school students from 26 states and 3 countries. This is just one example of how Thomas Jefferson Speech and Debate is making a name for itself nationwide. I've been a part of this team for 2 years, and as president this year, I am so proud of everything we stand for. We are a team of future lawyers, of business executives, of maybe even professional actors. We are a team of nerds and jocks and drama geeks, and each of us has a different goal in being a part of this team, but we are all so focused on the value of speech and debate. We give up weekend after weekend, hour after hour of personal time to represent our school in one of the most grueling academic activities in the Federal Way School District. I'd like to end with a brief preview of my humorous interpretation that I will be taking to state and the national qualifier. It's entitled Annie Rella. Bam! Annie Rella. Bam! Annie Rella. Bam! Annie Rella. Who in tarnation are you? Oh, I am your good, awesome, amazing fairy cow mother. Now, Annie Rella, what is the problem with you? Well, you see, I really wanted to go to the ball, but my stepmother won't let me. And even if she did, I have nothing to wear. Oh, that is nothing but a bunch of hogwash. You will go to the ball. I will? Of course. Now, did you pitch a fit? Yes? That didn't work? That one usually works. Okay, we'll try something more serious. Something to bring her around to your way of thinking. Like magic?